Morning, Professor Stoda.
Oh, good morning, Carlos. How's your day going?
It's pretty much like any other day, except I've been thinking about your last lecture.
Chapter 5, How Experience or Practice Produces Somewhat Permanent Change in Behavior.
Yeah, on the chapter of learning. Well, that lecture was on Monday, and all yesterday I kept noticing examples throughout my day.
Interesting. How about you tell me about your day and how it went?
I was driving towards the campus when all of a sudden a car slammed its brake right in front of me. I later realized that the loud screeching noise from the tires of the car was the unconditioned stimulus. I associated the loud noise with fear because I was afraid I would actually run into the car.
That's a great example of classical conditioning. The neutral stimulus is the car you were in, and the loud noise was the unconditioned stimulus. The fear of the noise was the unconditioned response, thus causing you to feel fear from the noise and linking it to crashing, which is a conditioned response. Do you remember about B.F. Skinner?
Not really. Who is that?
Well, B.F. Skinner was a behavioralist that strongly believed that psychologists needed to study measurable and observable behavior. This behavioralist studied Pavlov's classical conditioning and found a way to explain how the product of learning is created by all behaviors. He's the man that gave the name operant conditioning in place for learning voluntary behavior. He said things that people or animals do to operate is a voluntary behavior. Hence, voluntary behavior equals operant behavior. Now their learning process of behavior is operant conditioning.
That was just the start of my day. Once I finally made it to campus, I walked into class late. I sat down out at the corner of my eye. A paper plane came across my face, and before it hits me, I bat it down. Isn't this an example of operant conditioning? The threat of an object coming towards me caused me to flinch and hit the plane down.
Yes, it is a good example of operant conditioning. When you notice the paper plane coming towards you, you had involuntary response, which is your eyes flinched as it reflex. By hitting the plane down, you voluntarily reacted by moving your arm and striking the plane away from yourself.
Well, it turned out, because of all the misbehaving and disruption going on, that the professor decided to give us a pop quiz.
Good, that's how I would have demonstrated positive punishment if my students act that way in my courses.
How is that positive? It's a surprise quiz.
Positive in this usage doesn't mean that you normally think it means. The learning chapter of psychology positively means to add. Your professor added a punishment so that your class would want to stop misbehaving. Just remember that in mathematical terms, like positive is equals plus.
That makes a lot of sense, seeing that everyone in class stopped acting like monkeys from that point on. During the quiz, the professor announced that if more than 80% of the students received A's on this quiz, the class would be released early. So I noticed that this was an example of fixed ratio schedule of reinforcement.
Excellent observation. Your professor was offering a reward, which is reinforcement, in exchange for a specific number of students that had to excel on the quiz.
Well, the fixed ratio schedule of reinforcement worked out in my favor. We succeeded on the quiz and were let out an hour in advance. This allowed me to go to the computer lab and log in the hour I needed in order to receive extra credit from my class.
Now this is an example of fixed interval schedule of reinforcement. Remember, reinforcement means good. Because the extra credit is a reward being enforcement, But to receive this reward, you had to log in for a specific amount of time on the computer.
I had to run to my next class just so I could make it in before the professor starts taking away points on my grade for being late.
The professor is demonstrating negative reinforcement by removing, which is the negative, points which you don't like because it affects the grade in a bad way. This causes you to be on time and learn what is going on and being taught that day.
Wait, I haven't even told you the highlight of my day. Because I showed up on time and I logged in the whole hour for the computer lab, the professor gave me twice the extra credit points.
Which professor is this? They apply great learning methods. This professor is demonstrating positive reinforcement. They are adding positive, something you like, the extra credit, in order to get you to log in the hours at the lab and showing up on time.
She's Professor Ray's for my nutrition class. I just thought of another thing that happened to me yesterday. So later I went to the library to check out a book. The only thing was that someone else checked out the book I wanted. The librarian told me that it is scheduled to return in an hour. So I waited the hour for the book. Once I finally got the book, it only took me 5 minutes after checking out the book to get kicked out of the library for being disruptive.
Have you ever heard anyone ever say learning it the hard way? Well, you just learned it the hard way. This is an example of negative punishment. The librarian took away, which is the negative, and the book as a punishment for disrupting the library.
That's all I can remember that happened to me yesterday. I'll tell you one thing though, because I was late and all my experience with timing yesterday, I know not to be showing up late anymore.
Another example. This is conditioned emotional response. This is a type of classical conditioning. You learn from your fear of having a hectic day that you prefer to be on time, which in turn causes you to avoid stresses like having points taken away and allows you to get rewarded for being on time, like extra credit.